On today's starting nine, we celebrate, that's right, celebrate the Carlos Correa contract and the very bright future of Major League Baseball. We're then joined by internationally renowned baseball physicist Professor Alan Nathan. He's the world's foremost expert in all things baseball science, and he's here to teach a class today. The hot stove's still humming, and good chance your team's not going to make that final move, so just shake it off, and let's have a great starting nine. Action, welcome back to Starting Nine. Carl here in Chicago, Jake in Texas. We're ready to go. We're going to have a great show.
We are ready to have a great show. You just scared the shit out of me. Really.
Fuck,
you this is something that we haven't done much, without our good friend Colin. You forgot to hit record. Fortunately, we were only going for about 5 minutes. We can run that back, no problem. That was just kind of easing into the show. We got some stuff out of the way. Now we'll just rewind it a little bit, do it over. You're ready. But again, you scared the shit out of me.
I startled you. I startled myself. That's such a big no-no in the biz. All right. And I say in the biz, like you can't be, off the top. One time I sat down with a legendary guy in Chicago, Mark Silverman. And this was right when I was starting my podcast. Nobody's willing to talk to me. He gives me like 2 hours one night. We're just chopping up the Cubs and Bulls, and it's just this amazing conversation. Carl, come by the studio. Love it. Love to have you on the air. It's just a legendary moment. I've been listening to Sylvie forever. And then he hangs up, and I'm like, oh, did not record a single second of that.
No, but you got the experience. And hopefully You remember a good bit of it.
A great inside joke to this day. Fuck my inside joke, though. Huge news across town. I don't want to be insensitive to the holiday season, all the stuff we have going on, but like Carlos Correa, 13 years, cash the over, massive deal. Dude gets paid, generational wealth, blah, blah. But the Giants out of nowhere.
Seemingly out of nowhere. We know they were heavy on Judge. They missed out on Judge. So they were ready to spend that money elsewhere. And what a great way to do that in Carlos Correa. They got him for 13 years. Look, he's probably going to be a really, really good shortstop for 8 to 10 of those years. We'll see what happens on the back end, but that's so far down the road. No one really cares about that. Full no trade clause, no opt-outs, very reminiscent of the Bryce Harper contract with the Philadelphia Phillies. No surprise, same agent in Scott Boras. Crawford will be moving over to third base. What's interesting to me is the history between the Dodgers and the Giants. Carlos Correa going from being with the Astros and the whole Joe Kelly thing. I mean, it's going to be an interesting debut in Dodger Stadium for Carlos Correa this season.
I love that you bring that up right away, because when we originally started this show, I think a huge bedrock of the conversation was like a lot of these beefs that come up early in the season, and just like a lot of the conflict. And I'd be like, yo, so what's going on with this and that? And take me behind a lot of my questions, you were like, is this serious, or how heavy is this stuff? And so, yeah, let's go back to this for a second. Carlos Correa, it's a nice full circle is what I'm saying. Carlos Correa signs with the Giants, competing against the Dodgers. I think they made some schedule changes, but I still think they play at least 15 times next year. Do you think he gets drilled in the first game?
No, I wouldn't think so. And I think a lot of this is pushed further along by the fan bases. Like the fans get so into it, and rightfully so. And then when somebody retaliates or somebody does something, on the field, it just escalates it that much further. I don't know if it's completely put behind everybody. I want to say that it is, but once the fans get a hold of this and they run with it, it might bring back some of that animosity and some of that bad blood between both parties. But I would like to say that he's not drilled. I don't want to see that. I mean, I'm sure that the fans do. I just want to see hard fought baseball played and two great teams going at it. That's really all I care about. If something comes up during the season where a message needs to be sent, then that'll happen. But I think if it's done just based on what has happened in the past, I think that's the wrong move.
Yeah, because there is certain thresholds, right? Like, I think it was Joe Kelly or was like right after the Astros news broke.
Yeah.
Let me back that up.
Well, I just think the situation was handled right or wrong. Messages were sent, and then let's move on and let's play the game.
Yeah. But for the Dodgers and the Giants rivalry, maybe it's been dead for just like a little bit. I remember when the Giants were pretty good with Logan Webb in the NLCS, I believe it was, when they playing each other. Was it Game 5? Came down to like the last inning. It was like a one-run game, elimination game. Even then, it felt like, oh, well, the Giants are the underdog and they're the little brother. Man, it'd be great to get just a powerhouse NL West rivalry going where they're toe-to-toe.
Yeah, it'd be really nice to see that, but I'm not sure the exact record, but I think Dodgers were 16-3 or something like that against the Giants last year. And historical rivalries, yes, but current day right now, it's not necessarily that much of a rivalry. It is. It'll always remain that way between the fan bases, understandably, but you need to be slightly more competitive for the majority of the baseball community to view that also as a rivalry.
Poor Scott Harris, too. I made this note. I saw the deal. When Scott Harris was with the Giants, he's like hunting like bargains for Carlos Rodon and Kevin Gossman. He leaves to take over the Tigers front office, and right away the Giants are like, we got $380 million for Judge, we got $330 million for Correa. I don't know how to really tie this together without upsetting people. Just hear me out. I don't think Steve Cohen is going to get enough credit for how quickly he's changed other organizations' willingness to just go above and beyond.
He has. There's no doubt about it.
It's a great thing for baseball. It's great.
Yeah, we talked about this last show or the show before that, and I think you asked, is this good for the game? Is he going to, entice other teams to spend a ton of money or put pressure on teams to spend more money? And I think it's done exactly that. I completely agree with what you're saying, and when you brought that up, because look, if this guy's going to do shit that he's doing, like other teams have to, if you're trying to compete and you're going after the same kind of guys, you almost have to do it, or you're just going to, risk the Mets taking all the guys you want.
Right. Like here's a note. The Twins offered Correa 10 years, $285 million. A Minneapolis sports team committed over $250 million in an offer to a single player. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons for that, but the state of baseball, when you look at some of these deals coming out, it's not look at all these deals coming out, and making the joke about like Mike Hampton as a kid, he had the biggest contract of all time. And you think back to being a kid, it's like, oh, what was that massive deal? It's like, oh, it was the Mike Hampton deal that stands out. And like, there's so many kids that in that standpoint now walking around Cooper's age that are like, oh, the Trey Turner contract, the Xander contract, the Aaron Judge contract. We're like, it's just a normalized part of the experience of baseball now, where it's like, yo, dude, if you ball out, we're not even talking about like, yo, can you get $100 million? Or there's other benchmarks, 20 million a year. It's like me getting out of college and being like, well, I can't wait. If I ever make $100,000 a year, I'm going to be rich. Now, dude, part of the baseball process now too is you're just going to be this normalized thing. Like, yo, if you ball out, you deserve like $250 million.
If you're in that echelon of player, that's what it seems like right now. But as we know, from year to year, that could change. It could absolutely change, and nobody envisioned what happened in 2017, 2018 offseason happening, but it did. Players were evaluated differently, so to speak, and money was handed out differently. A lot of guys, including myself, signed like as spring training was almost halfway done, which is fine. We handled it the best we could, and we ultimately signed and went about our business. But this offseason has changed drastically, I think, in good part to what Steve Cohen has said he was going to continue to try and do. And I like to see it, man. I really do. I like to see these teams spend this kind of money. And let's not forget, the money that they're spending is on, elite talent. So I like it. And you see some other signings, like, routine signings. I think Ross Stripling just signed a 2-year $25 with the Giants. So, they're continuing to make moves in other areas of need, and kind of just looking at their starting rotation. I like what they have from a starting pitcher perspective. So, are they going to compete for the division? I don't know for sure, but I think they're going to be. I think they'll be pretty damn good, honestly. If we look at the totality of kind of what they're going to be able to feature for 2023.
You have to be, again, Padre. We're not even talking about the Padres either. Here I am blowing the Dodgers. I should give way more respect to the Padres here. And the Diamondbacks have tough pitching. Colorado's a tough place to play. We can sit here and talk. The NL West is by and large good for the Giants, because if you don't go out and make this move for Correa, if you want to get Judge, you're toast. What else is going on with you, big man? How has been how's been the experience of, I guess, like, watching the fact that the market just exploded now? Like, it seems like everybody's getting paid. All these contracts, most of these contracts, I'm surprised with. Like, ooh, that's bigger than I thought it would be.
Well, which let's talk about it. Which ones are you surprised by? I think maybe, and we had this conversation with Chris Cotillo. Thought, maybe the 11 years, was it 260 or 280, was a tick high, but in order to bring him in, like, you might have had to go to that next level and add a year or 2 years and maybe kick up the AAV just a tick, because of the competitive nature of the teams that are in the market for these types of players. I think that I'm, not as surprised with, not surprised by the Judge deal, not surprised by the Trey Turner deal. And I guess even Carlos Correa, maybe the years, but that's the type of longevity that it's taking to get these guys. Because you're not going to give me the the 10th year or the 11th year. This team's going to, so you have to go above and beyond, I believe, to bring these players in the door. I think for the upper echelon guys that have signed, it's not as surprising, really. I mean, but they are huge numbers. We're not used to seeing this many 9, 10, 11-year deals, 11-year plus deals. I think that's why I'm so surprised, is that how long these contracts are going.
Yeah, the years. Definitely the years is where it's kind of driving things up. But they're willing to make these commitments, which is, to me, is more. You're seeing so many teams willing to make the commitment. It's a wholesale shift of the market. It's not one team. You're seeing multiple teams that have reported, they had 10 years on the table. They had 11 years on the table. And then conversely, the Twins won out with Correa because they were able to go big on the AAV. And now it seems like that strategy, however long we thought that would last, we talked to Boris about this, I should say Mr. Boris, at the All-Star game. And what I'm talking about is the average value of a contract. So like a short-term, way higher salary like Correa signed, or like what Steve Cohen's done with Verlander and done with Scherzer. And so that's not a long-term solution. When that came up, it was like, all right, that's going to influence and change things. And now I think the corresponding action back is you're seeing these long-term deals where it's like, listen, we're not going to give you $40 million a season. And Correa's like, well, that's what I'm worth. That's what a team's willing to pay me for a season. So, well, we could do 20, we could do 30 million. What if we gave you $28 million forever? Just come play for us right now. And I think that's going to be more of the long-term fix. Now, I would ask you, as a former player, what would you do? Would you take the shorter-term, higher payout, or would you take the longer-term deal?
I guess it depends. Like, do you want to, like, if there's an opt-out, like, do you want to, kind of like Correa, and do you want to play somewhere for 10 years, 10 plus years? Some guys say yes. Obviously, Harper, very happy and wanted to go to Philly for 13 seasons. The number makes it a little bit easier to say yes to that contract, obviously. Or would you want to take a 4-year, 180? I don't know. It's hard to say, because 180 million or 330 million, it's still an incredible amount of money. It's going to change your life either way. I mean, your kids shouldn't be able to spend it all. What's going to make you and your family the happiest? I think that's what it comes down to. So it's hard for me to say. I would have to I would have to look at the teams, the city plays a big part in that, how competitive the team is. Like, look, not that these deals would even be on the table, but, if you're offered a 5-year deal for, to go to, let's say LA or Chicago, and you got a 10-year deal in Pittsburgh, like you're probably going to go 5 years in LA or Chicago. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I can sense that, like, and knowing you in the family sense and bringing that up and like, well, what makes sense for you and your family? Like, yeah, that's going to skew itself towards long term and kind of like the security behind it. It's an interesting question because like I feel like we're not out of these short term high AAV deals that you obviously see. I think it's a good tactic for well established veterans that are like you're not going to get these guys for 5-6 years. Like what Scherzer and Verlander are doing is just tremendous way to close out the career. Is this mercenary style of 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, very short term, high impact contracts. I just don't know how much that's going to change. In the large scale, I feel it's going to create this huge gap, and you see it now, and there's just going to continue to be this bigger gap. And now you're seeing the teams that are like, all right, well, the Giants are on this side of the line. What side is your team on? And what side of these clubs going to be on as the years go on? And the Cubs, they're not spending money, and you're starting to see teams that have dragged their feet for years. Like now it's time to pony up. Who's spending the fucking money? Who's willing to participate in like what looks to be like the next era of where Major League Baseball is going if you want to compete for a World Series championship, and who's just fucking around here to sell tickets and hot dogs and play the organ music and all that stuff. And I think it's going to be much easier, much more transparent. A couple of years down the road, be like, you were always full of shit. You weren't willing to do what it takes. I'm willing to say we're entering a new golden era of baseball. How about that?
I agree with you. Yeah, it's changing. I think for the better. It's great. I mean, you look at and basketball is a different sport, but even in football, I mean, look at the money that's handed out in those two sports. I mean, in basketball, guys are signing, super max deals that I've never heard of. And I'm not a basketball insider. I don't know the game extremely well. I watch enough to know what's going on. I'm like, fuck, so-and-so just signed a 4-year, $260 million deal. Like, what the fuck is that? I mean, good for them. Like, I want everybody in every walk of life, every profession, but especially like, the sport I care so much about. I want to see all these guys get paid. I really do, because it's so difficult to get to the point where you're in a position to be able to earn this kind of money. I mean, most 90% of guys never even get to see free agency. They play a few years here and there. Maybe maybe they're able to make some decent money in arbitration for a year or two, and underperformance or injury comes into play, and then they retire, or they kind of jump around from team to team, get a little bit of big league time here and there. Then when they retire, they have to go get a real job. So to see guys get this type of financial security for their family and for the rest of their lives, it's an exciting time for them, but also for me as a former player, I like seeing it.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of getting paid, a lot of these guys they're gonna need somewhere to put all this money. Ridge Wallet's an ultra slim minimalist wallet that can hold up to 12 cards plus room for cash. There's over 30 colors and styles, including carbon fiber and burnt titanium, and it's made with RFID blocking technology that protects you from digital pickpocketers. Maybe we should send a Ridge Wallet over to Carlos Correa or Aaron Judge, or maybe you want to send a Ridge Wallet to a loved one for the Christmas season, or maybe you want to take care of yourself and give a present to yourself. Go to ridge.com/starting9 to save up to 40% off through December 22nd. That's ridge.com/starting9 to save up to 40% off. We've talked so much about the technology and like these are different wallets. You hate your wallet. You look at your wallet, you feel bad about it. It's sloppy, bad leather. Your aunt gave it to you 14 years ago and you're out of convenience. You refuse to change the wallet. I know that because I've lived that. Go to ridge.com/starting9. Take care of yourself. Start acting like a respectable human being. Get yourself a decent wallet. Go to ridge.com/starting9, 40% off through December 22nd. the Carlos Correa news is so big. Obviously, the drastic implications in my end is I'm like stumbling over myself as I'm really confident about where I think baseball is headed based on the last 2 weeks, and I feel so much better than I did a year ago about the state of baseball. And I really want to make that like like that's why I feel empowered about all these contracts and seeing when things are going. Um, we did bury a huge thing in the intro, though, and we have a massive interview completely off the wall and unrelated to free agency and news and all this stuff. It's with the baseball physicist and world-renowned expert. I want a good time to break up a lot of these like contract talks and this team and roster like unique conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it was really fun to talk to the professor, and you could just hear his love for the game and being able to apply his expertise to the game of baseball is really unique and interesting, and the things he's been a part of, and he's tied so closely to the game. And as a player who, as a starting pitcher, who was always trying to kind of maximize certain things physically, to create the most spin or to create the sharpest and latest break on all my pitches. And we talked about tunneling, which is interesting to hear him talk about. And I asked him some questions that I was pretty surprised by his answers. And it made me feel like I'm smarter than I am, which I don't have a great grasp of. Or an advanced understanding of physics, especially on his level.
I mean, he's an educator.
He kind of made me feel like I do with some of his responses. So really cool to talk to him. And, he's the guy that we should have on the show here and there just to get his insight, especially as the season progresses and things that stand out to him that are interesting from a physics perspective.
Yeah, Professor Nathan, a legendary guy in his own field of physics, and as he'll explain in the interview, adopted a baseball emphasis in kind of the back end of his career, and now that's really all he does. Like I said, legendary physicist at the University of Illinois when I was down there, and I saw his name. He was quoted in that recent big article about like MLB changing ball data. And I'm like, you know what? It's been a while. I should reach out to Professor Nathan. I feel like this would be an interesting conversation for the boys. So this is a long one away because this is coming out of nowhere. Talk about Carlos Correa. We have other news we'll get out of when we get done with Professor Nathan. But let's break it up and get to the professor. And let's just talk some good old, just a couple guys chopping it up about baseball.
I mean, shit. There's a lot going on, and we got to talk about the Sean Murphy, the three team trade. I don't know if we really addressed that yet. Well, one of the things that it bothers me a little bit with the A's is that they had guys like Matt Olson, Matt Chapman, Sean Manaea, Chris Bassett, Freddie Montas. And are you rebuilding? Are you like what are you trying to do? You just gave away a very controllable catcher, and I'm sure you got some good pieces in return. Sure. But it's almost like they don't know what type of organization they are. And it's got to be upsetting for fans to see such talented players, be in that uniform and then so quickly be gone.
Well, they don't have any fans. They don't have that's not, and there's no identity there. There's no pressure there. 2,000, 3,000, and they've sent them all away. They've completely killed that place. And they've done it slowly but surely, go back to when La Russa was there and they were winning World Series championships. And sure, there are good teams and there's good stories and the Moneyball stuff. But each year, if you're a fan, it's just like they got rid of this guy, they didn't take care of this guy, and just like every single year. And then this is what happens: they don't take care of the fans, they don't take care of the stadium, they don't invest in the team, and they just keep splitting sharing revenue. And then they're gonna fucking, you know what? And the guy who bought him for $180 million in 2001, whose parents started the Gap and fucking collected trust fund checks his entire goddamn life. Now I'm getting all worked up, and Professor Nathan doesn't like it when I get worked up. But my point is about the Sean Murphy trade is it's trash for Oakland. The Braves don't have to go out and spend nearly as much money as Steve Cohen. And guess what? They just leveled up maybe more than the Mets. Maybe they got better. Maybe they improved more than the Mets this offseason, which is an insane thing to think about. The Mets just spent like $130 They're going to spend $500 million next year, cash, payroll. And the Braves are like, oh, we're going to trade. Don't worry, we have something up our sleeve.
Yeah, well, the Braves are kind of like in the shadow of the Mets and the Phillies with some of these signings. And, I just knew that they weren't going to sit there and do nothing. They sent Contreras to Milwaukee. They bring in Sean Murphy. Just a really, really good backstop. And it seems like they're in position to probably lock Sean Murphy up, because why wouldn't you? You're in a position where he's got, 3 years of control. You can probably make an offer that's really hard for him to turn down. And at the catching position, it can be very volatile. It's hard to be a backstop for a full season, let alone multiple full seasons, back to back to back. So I bet if they put something on the table in front of him that's hard to turn down, he's going to end up being a Brave for the next, let's say, 6, 7, 8 years.
I just realized, you see that face I made while we're talking about this. I went from having Wilson Contreras to now I'm competing. Now I have to watch Wilson Contreras
competing against both of them.
Do you believe in the baseball gods? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I do a little bit.
I very much do. We should have asked Professor Nathan about what's the coefficient factor for baseball gods? How do you account for that? Or how do you factor that in your equation? I should have brought up Sean Murphy news off the top. We made a big deal about Sean Murphy. Be funny. We're never going to get to Professor Nathan. That's okay. He's a nice man. We are getting to him soon. But I should have brought up the Sean Murphy news earlier. It's such a big deal because, like I said, the Braves level up big time with the Mets. Steve Cohen's going to spend $500 million next year. The Mets, don't worry. He has 3 years of control left. And the great joke's flying around, waiting for the Braves to sign him to the 10-year, $22 million extension. And now the world will find out just how good Sean Murphy is, because he's a gamer. He's a gritty. There's very little about his elite play that's sexy in the way we think about, like the way a casual fan thinks about sexy baseball. The way a person who knows the game loves this dude. Sorry.
Right. Yeah, no, you're going to get Murphy this year for $3.5 million, and then we'll see what happens as far as contract talks go. But then the next season, make 10 or so, or they'll have him sign a deal that'll eat up his years of arbitration, and go from there. But if you ask me, I think this guy's going to end up being a Brave via a long-term extension. I don't know the numbers. The Braves have just kind of shocked me with the money that they've given out, how much money they've given to certain guys. And you see Albies got what he got, Michael Harris. Yeah, it's just being in the front office and coming up with these numbers and these contracts. It's a weird science, if you ask me. That's why I'm not in the front office. But I think it's ridiculous if they don't try and lock him up long term, either in spring training or at the All-Star break. I think that's probably what's going to happen.
Like I said, the world's about to find out how good Sean Murphy is now that he's in the NL East. And
yeah, a lot of people don't even know who he is.
Wright State, he's like one of those gritty ass Rust Belt nowhere colleges. Grinder.
Yeah. No one knows Wright State. I played with a guy in the Texas Collegiate League from Wright State. That's the only reason I know
their
what that
mascot
is
the Flyers because it's in Ohio, something aviation related. Speaking of aviation and sciences, you want to fly a plane, you got to know a little bit about physics. Last thing before we do bring Professor Nathan on the show, I did like when Joe Madden, when we had Joe on and he was talking about like how you would gravitate towards the more unique conversations and stuff. And there is part of me I've been like, I gotta talk to another player, Jay. Talk to another player. Like exactly what you're gonna talk to these guys. So I do like these conversations because there is a different side of you. So there's maybe a personal one I could save for after the show or after the interview, but I'm gonna share that with the audience because I do like you. As the wheels are fucking spinning once we get into this. Once we get into a great reference about did he know? Let's go talk some seam shifted wig with Professor Nathan. All right, well, we're in the interview portion of today's show, and we're joined by the professor, Alan Nathan. Welcome to today's show, world-renowned baseball physicist. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, well, look, thank you for that very nice introduction. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Thanks again, Professor. And so first, did your love for baseball develop first, or physics, or kind of simultaneously as you got a little bit older? How did both of those come about?
Right, good question. No, I have been a big baseball fan since I was maybe 10 years old, something like that, before I even knew what physics was, before I could even spell it, I'm sure. But I've been a big fan, and nothing more than just being a big fan. Up until about a bit over 20 years ago, when I kind of got the idea, well, maybe I could actually do some research into this. And so there's this famous book, The Physics of Baseball by Robert Adair, and I read that book and I gave a talk about it locally here. And that sort of started me on my way, and it sort of evolved, initially slowly, and ever since, maybe 2010 or so, it's pretty much how I spend my time these days.
And so, are there any teams you work with? Are we at NDAs or any MLB clubs you consult, or the league office?
I've done some what you might call informal consulting for a variety of different MLB clubs. They just, they send me an email, they call me up, and I say, look, I'm happy to talk. It's not going to cost you anything. But I've had more formal consulting gigs with the MLB office. I'm still operating under an NDA from them, as well as various technology companies that, back when Sport Vision was providing the cameras for the ball tracking, I did some consulting for them. I've done some informal consulting for TrackMan Radar, which is no longer used in the MLB parks. Rapsodo, there's probably more, I can't think of them offhand. And I was actually very involved back around the time I guess I talked with you, and even earlier, with the NCAA on their efforts to regulate the performance of aluminum and composite bats. So the BB Core bat, that's what came out of all of that. Yeah. And that's sort of changed, to a large extent has really changed the game at the college and high school level.
I'm glad.
Yeah, I lived with some teammates that were mad at you about that.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up. I'm glad you brought up the aluminum and composite bats. I have an 11-year-old son who's now, going from -12 to -10, -8, and all these different bats. And I remember when I was in Little League, we used the Air Attack and the C Core and all these crazy bats. And we started to realize that at a certain point, it's starting to become dangerous. So has aluminum and composite bats kind of hit their apex or their peak, in a sense, to where they're not going to be allowed to get much better because of like the risks of injury, potential injury, and also like these young kids are just hitting the ball so damn far. Is it kind of maxed out at this point in time?
Yeah, I think it at the college and high school level, it's maxed out 10 years ago. Already 10 years ago, with these so-called BB Core bats. Now, more recently, maybe in the last 5 years, they've maxed out for the most part at the youth league level, Little League, Pony League, Babe Ruth League, those kinds of things. So USA Baseball, which is sort of the umbrella organization that oversees all of youth baseball, they had a similar program to try to regulate the performance of their bats. Now, their bats are really different because you go from T-ball baseball all the way up to just below high school level baseball. So, at the high school level, I think you're restricted to a -3. but you can go a whole lot lower, as you pointed out, for Little League and such things as that. So it took a little bit of effort, a little bit more effort to figure out how to regulate those bats. But there is a performance standard. I don't remember exactly what it's called now, but there is now a performance standard in place for all of the. I think there's one exception. There's one league that didn't go along with it, but I don't remember. UAAA baseball, or something.
USSSA.
USSSA. I think
Yeah.
they decided to go their own way. So those bats have a different method of regulating the performance, which in my opinion, does not work as well, and probably allows for, what you might call hotter bats.
Sure.
More of a risk of injury. And look, but all the other organizations that are part of USA Baseball have gone along with it, which is really nothing more than just an extension of what they're doing at the college and high school level. So the bats have maxed out in the sense that, assuming everyone's playing by the rules, the bats perform, a little bit better than wood, but not enormously better. And if the manufacturers were left to their own devices, as they were, say, 20 years ago, they would tremendously outperform wood bats.
Yeah, we'd be hitting the ball to the moon now.
Yeah, I mean, and of course that has two effects. One is simply the danger to pitchers, corner infielders, where the ball is coming off so fast that they can't react in time. And of course, the other is just upsetting the balance between pitcher and batter to be much, much more in favor of the batter, leading to many more home runs than than you'd expect. High scoring games. And as a result of high scoring games that stretch on for a long time. And so all those things correcting that were part of the motivation for the NCAA anyway to do what they did.
In your research then with bats, like is the break-even point with wood so far away that justifies to have such like a big industry around metal bats? Or like from your position, does it just seem simpler if everybody just went to wood at a certain age?
There are some advantages to non-wood bats, aside from exit velocity. So in effect, what the BB core bats are doing is regulating exit velocity. They don't talk directly about exit velocity, but it's equivalent to regulating exit velocity. You're trying to maximize the amount of the amount of exit velocity in order to reduce the number of home runs and for safety reasons. But so as far as exit velocity is concerned, the regulated bats perform just a little bit better than the wood bats. Not a lot better, but a little bit better. But there are other advantages to using aluminum or composite bats. And the thing to realize is that those bats are hollow bats as opposed to a solid wood bat. And so because they're hollow, less of the weight of the bat is actually in the barrel of the bat. And so the batter can more easily swing the bat, okay? You can get a higher bat speed, but again, that's all taken into account. But more importantly than the higher bat speed is the better bat control. So a batter can perhaps wait a little longer on the pitch before making a decision. The batter can more easily adjust the swing once the swing has begun with an aluminum bat over a wood bat. So I call that, what's the word I use? It's not bat speed, it's bat, I can't remember the word I typically use for it, but it actually, there's nothing that prevents a college player from using a wood bat. They prefer not to use a wood bat, I believe, because of this particular feature. And even at the professional level where they are using wood bats, they're using bats that are a whole lot lighter than they were, say, a couple of decades ago. 32 ounces bats, 33-ounce bats. Whereas, maybe 20, when I was growing up, it would be not at all uncommon to be in the high 30s. Uh,
Now, how is that changing so much because of the wood? Essentially, like the trees are the same. Are they were they just thicker? Because and I would assume that the lengths of the bats were roughly between 32 and 35 inches, give or take a little bit. Um, but how I don't know exactly how the bats were constructed back then. I have a better idea how they're constructed now. Um, and guys get the best hitters usually get the best wood with the thickest grains and so on and so forth. Um, so was the, or were they using longer bats or thicker barrels? Like
yeah,
how did that
yeah,
work?
yeah. No, you're asking a good question, and I'm not sure I have an answer for you on that. Uh, uh, it could be that they're so wood is an organic substance, and so no two trees are alike really. So it could be simply a selection process. There's variation in the density of the wood, and so it's quite possible they're simply using wood that's selected to be lower density. So for the same shape, bat length and profile, it would weigh less. Now, back in the really old days, people would use hickory, but this is in the Babe Ruth era, and hickory is naturally a denser wood than ash. And by the way, very few players are using ash anymore. It's simply because it's not so available anymore because of the ash borer, which is killing the tree. So I think maple is sort of the wood of choice for probably most major league hitters. And but there's some other woods. Beech, I think, is another one that's getting to be fairly common. But I don't have a good answer for you as to how they actually what they actually did to make the bats lighter. But it is definitely true that players these days are choosing a lot lighter bats than they did, a couple of
Well,
generations.
and yeah, you're exactly right. And one thing I was going to just touch on real quick, as far as the potentially having, college players, little league or younger levels use wood bats, and the one of the main problems with that is the bat control, the strength of the athletes. And if high schools, little leagues, if they were using wood, they would go through dozens and dozens and dozens of bats. And you see even major league hitters, break a significant amount of bats. I think it's because potentially the cost. Because if you're a minor league player and you have to supply yourself with bats. Most of those guys, if their agent doesn't provide them, they buy them themselves, and they get pretty damn expensive. So I think it's probably a size and a strength thing, and also probably a cost because that would get pretty expensive.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually don't know what a major league quality wood bat costs these days. You probably know better than I do about that. That's right. You used to have to actually swing a bat, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah, man. And I picked up one of my old bats the other day. I was hitting with my son in the cage, and I used a 32. I used a 34 and a half, 32 and a half. And I'm like, that's a heavy ass bat. Like I wasn't used to holding that thing anymore. And I know guys that are using 34-ounce bats. Some guys use 30-ounce bats. So you see a wide range of different types of bats. Some guys use the flared knob or the skinny handle. Some have a skinnier barrel for a little bit more back control. Like Javi Baez uses a gigantic barrel, kind of like Alfonso Soriano used to use. So it's very interesting to see the differences in styles, sizes, and weights that guys like to use. And I mean, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, they really are. And in the end, I think players choose the bat that they feel most comfortable swinging. I think, and everyone's different about that. So, you're trying to get high bat speed, of course, but you also need the bat control, and you have to be able to get around on the fastball. So, and you have to be able to make adjustments on the off-speed pitches. So, yeah, there are many factors that enter into this, and in the end, I think, as you point out, people just choose what they feel most comfortable with.
You talking about raw materials with the bats. Raw materials with the balls was recently in the news. This big
Yes.
report. I know you saw the report because I saw you were quoted in the report.
Yes.
So could you explain this report in layman's terms to our audience? I would hate to mumble jumbo my way through it.
Sure. So this is all the work of Meredith Wills, who, like me, is a physicist. She doesn't really do physics work anymore, um, but she has what she has been doing for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years is getting used baseballs from major league games, foul balls hit into the stands or however she managed to get them. And basically, she dissects them. She takes them apart layer by layer, and she, measures various things about the baseballs. Uh, so 2 years, I guess it was nearly 2 years ago now, in early 2021, she discovered that in the 20 let's see, let me get my years correct. In the 2020 season, the short season, there were two different types of baseballs being used that weighed slightly different. Maybe I think there was like 3 grams, which is maybe a tenth of an ounce different. So she found two different categories of balls, and there was an article written, I think it was in Sports Illustrated, and uh, there's a limit to what I can tell you about because I actually worked on this for under an NDA from Major League Baseball. The MLB contacted me about that and asked me what I knew about it. And anyway, come to find out, Rawlings, who makes the baseballs, had actually made the decision, and it's not clear to me whether MLB knew that they made this decision. I simply never found that out one way or the other. What they found was the parameter of the ball that's technically called the coefficient of restitution, COR, but I just simply call it the bounciness of the ball. Uh, they had discovered that over the last few years, it had crept up a little bit. There's a certain allowed region for how big this could be, and it crept up to be, close to the top of the allowed region, and they wanted to bring it back to basically the middle of the allowed range. And so the way that they did that was they, again, this is my understanding of the way they did that, was they didn't wind the wool quite as tightly. And that reduced this bounciness back to the middle of the allowed range. But a consequence of that was, because the wool is not wound as tightly, there's less wool, and therefore the ball weighs a little bit less. And so it was about a tenth of an ounce. Again, well within the allowed range. So that happened. So during the 2021 season, both the old and the new baseballs were used, according to MLB, in roughly 50% of each, are randomly mixed together. So basically two different baseballs were used. The consequences, the practical consequences of this change are actually not all that great. I've written about this, and it was very, very difficult to see any, if you look at StatCast data, home run, fly ball distances, things like that. It would be I couldn't see the fact that there were two different baseballs, and I don't think anyone else could either. All right, so now fast forward to just a week or so ago, and now the claim is that in the 2022 season, not most of the balls were these new adjusted balls. There were a small number of the previous balls that were supposed to have been phased out. And then there was a baseball sort of in the middle between them, okay, that she called the Goldilocks ball, okay? It's in the middle between the two, the old ball and new ball. And that was what the article was about. And that ball differed from the new revised ball by about a third of a tenth of an ounce, about 0.04, 0.035 ounces, which is really, really tiny. And now, and that's quite frankly, is all that I know about this. But although what I would say is this: if you couldn't tell the difference in actual data between two balls that differ by a tenth of an ounce, for sure you're not going to find any differences if they differ by a third of that. So it was unexpected. My own view is it's probably all ado about nothing. I think for the practical implications of it, in terms of exit velocity, fly ball distances, home run production, things like that, are almost minuscule.
If that's the conclusion with the changes in balls being so minimal, and this has obviously caused an uproar and a lot of controversy around the baseball community, and players get pissed off about it. If the differences are that minimal, then why do they keep making adjustments to the balls, especially without telling people? Is it because people are just bored and they want to try and tweak things? Like what are they trying to accomplish? If things are, it's almost impossible to tell a difference.
Yeah. All I can do is give you my opinion about this. And my opinion about this is that with the exception of the thing I just told you where Rawlings was trying to reduce the bounciness of the ball, with that exception, I don't think they are trying to change the ball. Okay? The ball does change, okay, in a way that's very hard to control. The parts of the ball that Rawlings really knows how to control very well, they control the size of the ball, the weight of the ball, and this bounciness factor. I mean, they have been doing this for many years, and they really know how to adjust the manufacturing process to get those factors right. The thing that they cannot easily get right is the things having to do with the seams on the ball. And that affects the flight of the ball. That affects the air drag on the ball.
Is that because they're done by hand? Because isn't a certain portion of the ball it's done by hand, correct?
Yeah, right. So the inner part of the ball is all done basically by machine. Okay, the winding machines, the 3 layers of wool windings, that's all done by machine. But then you've got the leather cover and the red cotton threads, and that is all done by hand. I've visited the factory in Costa Rica, and the most striking thing about, they walked me through, they showed me exactly the whole process from beginning to end, and at the end of the process, or near the end of the process, there is a room full of more than 100 people. I don't know, I didn't count them, but it looks like maybe 200 people that are spending all day long sewing the threads, sewing the cover on. It's all done by hand. It's all inspected. They, run it through a machine to flatten out the seams, so the seams are flat. But it's a hand process using, organic materials, leather, cotton thread. And so there's variation, and so if from one ball to another, there might be small differences that are almost imperceptible differences in the way those seams are done that actually have an effect on a flight of a baseball.
Yeah, and I can tell you, from experience that with the major league balls, you can feel a slight difference. It's not crazy. You might get one where the leather is a little bit easier to move. One's a little bit tighter. The laces seem to sit slightly higher than another one, but it's nothing. It's nothing that's egregious that you look at it and you're like, okay, this is noticeably different from the rest. But slight variations, and it's interesting that the seams are done by hand. Have they attempted to do the seams by machine, or is it just it's a process that they actually can't do with a machine? It has to be done by hand.
Yeah, I don't know if they've tried to develop a way to do it by machine, uh, but I think it would. I think it would be quite hard to do it by machine. Uh, it's a very tedious process, and the the people who are doing it are trained very well, and they're amazingly fast at doing it. I don't. I mean, they probably can do a baseball every, I don't know, somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes, which is really amazingly fast. There's over 100 stitches you have to make, and they're probably very good at. Quite frankly, what I am amazed at how it might seem that there are inconsistencies from one ball to another. When I see how this is done, I'm amazed that they are as consistent as they are, quite frankly. Now, you could certainly make a baseball that is all completely machine made, but then it wouldn't be a baseball. I mean, you've seen these batting practice balls that are used sometimes that are there are little bumps in them that are sort of like seams, but they're not really seams. They're this manufactured. Golf balls are amazingly consistent from one ball to another in terms of their all different properties, including that the drag on the ball. But they're all totally machine made. There's no hand process to it whatsoever. And you could certainly create a baseball that way. But as I said, it wouldn't seem, it wouldn't be a baseball. It would have the same weight as a baseball, the same size as a baseball, but it simply wouldn't be the same.
You sent that video before we got on here, and you
Yeah.
used an overlay of Jake. What was the context of that video you sent me?
Yeah, the context was sort of the concept of late break on a pitch, and the amount of time that the batter has to look at the pitch to make a decision about whether to swing. Uh, and it's this whole thing that I think nowadays they call tunneling, where one of the things you want to do as a pitcher is make every pitch look exactly the same or very close to being the same for as much of the trajectory as possible, so that any deviation would occur late enough in the pitch that the batter really has no chance.
And
So
he was a poster boy of this. He was a good example, or I shouldn't say it like
yeah,
that. But like,
that's the I don't remember. I probably put this is back when you were with the Cubs. So this was maybe 5 years ago. I found this. I just found it as a good example. I'm sure there are many other examples, but
I can send you some of mine. My two seam. I'll send you my two seam.
Oh, okay, sure.
Very, very, very early break from Carl's two-seam.
But nowadays, this guy Rob Friedman, he just makes a living out of baseball ninja or whatever it is.
Pitching ninja.
Pitching ninja. So this is before he got involved in this, but now you could see countless videos for many different pitchers like that, where they're overlaying two pitchers to show how difficult it is for the batter. So this was sort of what the slides that preceded that were the reason, where I was talking about a very interesting experiment that these Japanese researchers did, where they were trying to quantify how much time the batter has to make a decision about a pitch. And so it all is related to this thing about the fact that the batter only, it may take 4/10 of a second between release and home plate, but the batter really has useful information only for maybe half that time, because by the time the pitch is halfway there, your brain has already figured out what that pitch is going to do, and you're sort of making your decision already. And so so that when you're trying to do this tunneling thing, where if you can make your pitches look alike for over half of the trajectory, you've really made it difficult for the batter. So I think I was comparing your fastball and cutter, I guess, is what I was
Okay.
comparing.
Well,
Yeah.
everybody wants to be able to do that, to have late sharp break on all their pitches, have explosive life through the zone with their fastball. But being able to apply that is so much harder than it is to kind of understand. And you see the advancement with, the Rapsodos, the TrackMans, the Edgertronics, slow motion cameras. So players are starting to really dive into that stuff, and Driveline has kind of pushed that along. And there's other academies kind of doing the same thing. So would you encourage players to grasp at least an elementary or intermediate understanding of physics when they're trying to do all that stuff? Because it's really easy to look at the Rapsodo and say, oh, this is my spin efficiency, this is the axis that my slider was on, but then they don't really understand. I could see the numbers, but I don't understand necessarily what that means. I can watch the video and see that it was a really nice pitch, but would combining the two really add benefit to players in our game?
In some respects, you're better able to answer that question than I am. I mean, if you can achieve what it is you want to achieve by using combinations of Rapsodo and Edgertronics and things like that, then you've done it without knowing exactly what the physics is. Okay, so I'm not, I don't. Pitchers have been doing what they've been doing, for many generations without really understanding the physics.
Right.
I don't know whether knowing the physics behind it is all that helpful.
Well, let's talk about wind then. Let's bring in like a variable like wind. When the wind is blowing into my face, I would always love to throw the changeup and the curveball because it seemed like they would have much better break. Some guys are like, well, the wind's blowing out, so it's gonna give an advantage to the hitters, which is slightly true. But if I can make my pitches move more, then it's an equalizer, or it actually gives me the advantage. And then,
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I
right,
mean, if the wind is blowing out towards you as the pitcher,
yes,
you're throwing against the wind. All other things equally, you will get more movement on your pitches. Absolutely correct. Um, yes. So, and obviously that's a physicsy thing. But now, what I don't know is the pitchers know this already, just from experience, without actually having, without really knowing the physics behind it. I mean, for me, it's interesting because I'm a physicist. I like to be able to explain things in physics terms. But I don't know whether you really need to understand the physics behind it in order to take advantage, to know that wind throwing against the wind is more advantageous for you.
right.
I mean,
And
you know it without knowing the
yes,
physics, right?
sure. I just didn't know if, like, say, when I was at my peak in throwing the way I was, if I had, I don't want to say your knowledge of physics, but let's say an advanced knowledge of physics, would I be able to like pick out exact starting points? Because if I knew that my curveball dropped, 21 inches and the lateral movement was 7 inches, like I could almost calculate exactly where I needed to start certain pitches to end up in certain spots.
Yeah, but again, the physics. I should point out the physics is known fairly well, but not perfectly well. And physicists like myself actually rely on data from things like Statcast and Rapsodo and things like that to try to firm up the actual our own understanding of the physics. Life is complicated here. Not only do you have the spin rate and the spin axis that you talked about, but you also have the seam orientation that throws, that you've heard of the seam shifted weight, no doubt.
Well, just actually, one of our first guests was Kevin Gosman, and he was explaining that to us, and we were kind of thrown off by it. And Kevin Gosman he's got one of the most elite fastballs in the game and probably the best split. of any guy in the game. That's arguable. But he's a starting pitcher that only uses 2 pitches. And the Blue Jays, I don't remember if it started in San Francisco.
Giants.
Okay, started in San Francisco. But they're like, hey, we only want you to throw a fastball split. And he's like, well, I don't really understand why. And then they kind of dove into the seam shifted wake, and I mean, it kind of blew us away.
See, I think the science behind the seam shifted wake is only sort of recently, in the last 2-3 years, has sort of come into fruition, where people, Bart Smith is the guy who's pioneered this, Utah State University professor, and he has discovered this through laboratory experiments where you can do controlled experiments to adjust the spin rate, spin axis, and seam orientation. And you could then simply directly see what it is what the pitch actually does when you orient the ball in a certain way. And he sort of developed the theory behind this. But I believe personally that pitchers know this already. They know how seam orientation affects their pitches. And now you can confirm or deny this, but I think you actually already know this. You don't call it seam shifted wake, but you know that through experience, because you've thrown countless numbers of pitches in your lifetime.
You're right.
You know what those pitches are doing when you make a little adjustment. Now, you certainly can know a lot better these days than you could in the past because of all the technology like Rapsodo and the Edgertronics and things like that. But I claim that you know this already. So here, let me just give you an example. Pitchers that throw both a 2-seam and a 4-seam fastball. If you look at and so there's a number of pitchers who do that. So I've actually looked at the data. I've not written about this before, but I have given talks about this. If you look at the movement, looking at the 4-seam versus 2-seam movement, what you generally find is that the total amount of movement is about the same. But with the 2-seam, you have more sideways, more run, and less rise than you do with the 4-seam. Now, if you didn't know anything at all about the seam shifted wake, and I didn't know anything at all about it prior to 3 years ago, I would conclude that the spin axis was actually different for those 2 pitches. But when you actually look at the high-speed Hawkeye data that tells you the spin axis, you find that the spin axis is very close to being the same. And the reason why the movement is different is because of the seam orientation being different. You get seam shifted wake primarily from the 2-seam and very little from the 4-seam for reasons that Bart Smith explains with all of his experiments. So, but I claim that pitchers know this already, that pitchers know that their movement on their 2-seam is different than their 4-seam. Despite the fact that their spin axis is the same, and the spin axis is largely determined by arm slot, I think.
Yeah,
so
you're right.
Here is something. So here, but once again, I'm claiming that I'm giving you guys much more credit than you're giving yourself. You know this already.
I guess it's just the terms that they use. It's like, oh shit, this is something new I've never heard before.
Exactly. So maybe I'm selling myself short, but I would argue that you really don't really need to understand the physics in order to play the game. Because this actually goes to the heart of my own motivation, if you will, for studying the physics of baseball. It's not to try to teach you guys new things. It's to try to satisfy myself that I understand the physics of what you already intuitively understand already.
Well
Does that make
said.
sense?
Yeah, it very much does.
Broader question, serious question. So like when I think about baseball physics, there's really the
batted ball outcome, and then there's the pitcher throwing the ball. There's a couple of these like really basic areas where you can see, okay, that's where physics is applied, or you can apply physics here. Is there something emerging right now that you're passionate about, or is there something you think can be emerging where a guy like me would look at and go, whoa, you would use physics to solve that, or look at that, or evaluate that type of thing about baseball? What would that be?
Okay, yes. In fact, there is a project that I'm currently working on that sort of gets back to what we were initially talking about with bats. So imagine that you have two wood bats that are virtually identical, same length, same weight, same profile. The question is, do they perform the same? When you go to a batting cage or whatever, hit off live pitching, hit off a tee, will it produce the same exit velocity? All other things being equal, okay? And that's a question that I'm trying to answer. I'm trying to answer by doing some careful laboratory experiments using bats that have been provided to me that are nominally identical bats. So I'm trying to find out how different they perform. And if they perform different, what about them leads to a difference in performance? And is it possible to have a simple test that anyone can do to select only the best performing bats for use in a game? And so this is one of the maybe rare things that I do that actually has practical consequences. I mean, if a major league batter, has 24 bats at the beginning of the season, and he can select the 2 or 3 best bats for actual use in a game that maybe gives them an extra mile per hour of exit velocity over the course of a long season, that can make a difference. And so anyway, this is a project that I and my collaborators that I'm working with on this we actually began it last spring, and we got a bat company provided the bats, but part of that is we had to sign an NDA, and that got onto all kinds of legal issues. So it's only actually in the last week or so that we actually got started on the actual project, and the hope is we'll complete this project by maybe middle of March or so, right in the middle of spring training. So we'll see how. I have no idea how it's going to turn out, by the way.
Yeah. Professor Nathan, thank you so much for joining us. And again, yeah, we're definitely going to talk to you again soon. I know we're going to have more follow-up questions for you.
All right. Yeah. Happy to talk anytime. It's definitely fun for me. And yeah.
And where can you're active on Twitter. Where can people follow you on social?
Yeah. So Twitter, it's POB Guy, POBGUY. POB is Physics of Baseball. So POB Guy, at POB Guy on Twitter. And I have a similar handle on a new social media thing called Post. I'm trying to make most of my baseball stuff that I tweet about or observe is on Twitter. But Twitter is falling into some problems these days. So I may evolve out of Twitter. I haven't decided yet.
For now, though, it's POB Guy. Go follow him. It's Professor Alan Nathan. Thanks so much for joining the show. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, Professor. Thanks. Great meeting you.
My pleasure. Enjoyed it.
And there he is, Professor Nathan. Long interview, lengthy interview. Had to do it. Got into it. I was like, well, we'll just ask about the balls but then I was like, no, we're here. We're talking baseball and science.
Yeah, and I don't think maybe there are dumb questions, but if you ask enough dumb questions, then, you get all the seemingly easy answers that you need. And when you sit down with a guy, like Professor, they might seem like dumb questions to him, but, we're dummies. So I like to ask as many dumb questions as I can, because if you ask enough of them, then there are no more dumb questions.
And that's interesting. I think there's a room of people in this world where like he's the number one person they'd want to talk to about something. Like you could fill an auditorium of people that are like chomping at the bit to hear what this guy comes up with next. So the stuff he was talking about, his research about with bats and the NDAs and stuff, that's real. There will be, I would imagine if he's at that stage in researching it, there should be some significant report in the next 2 to 3, like something will come out of this guy's time. He ain't fucking wasting it. I'll say that.
No, yeah, he's a brilliant mind, and I think that the league is probably going to utilize that. And I'm sure that they already are. Probably some things that he couldn't talk about with us, you know? Yeah, that's fine. Maybe off camera.
I too have signed an NDA with Major League Baseball at one point. I believe it's expired. I have to look at it, but I've consulted Major League Baseball on. I am not even joking. I am like a registered consultant with Major League Baseball. I don't know if I put that in my resume, and I don't even, now that I say it, that sounds so badass. Why the fuck? Why did I wait this long to say that out loud?
I don't know, Carl. I don't know.
I have a couple of I know, you know what's going on, man? Let's just, some segments, not really. We don't have to.
Well, fuck. Yeah, I told you I woke up this morning feeling awful, and I never really get sick. Had a little sore throat, but I went out and took a long walk with the dog, barefoot, cold air in the lungs, came home, and me and Ricky worked out, and I feel a lot better. It's like you feel shitty early in the morning and then at night. So we'll see how it plays out. I might go get an IV today. We'll see. I gotta go to the eye doctor at 1 o'clock.
You'd be fucking kidding me.
I don't like to
you.
feel shitty. I don't like to feel bad. I have a great doctor. We'll get a vitamin IV and be back before you know it. I got to go to the eye doctor, dude. I've had a sty like off and on for like 3 or 4 months, and it went away, but my left eyelid's still puffy. I don't know if anybody that's listening has had styes before, but I've never had one until this year, and now it won't go away. So I'm going to a specialist, see what he can do for me, because I don't want a puffy eyelid the rest of my life.
I had a sty, and it terrified me in college. The worst part, though, is it was obviously just looks like pink eye, and you don't want to be walking around with pink eye on a baseball team.
You just look dirty. It's like, hey, you got what's wrong with your eye? I don't know. That's why I'm going to see this guy.
A couple teammates, there was a hand, foot, mouth disease breakout.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I know a lot of people that have had it.
Or something. Juniors in college. Okay, really? That's the thing?
Yep.
Another one, we're sitting there drinking in college one time, a guy gets droop face. You ever see that? Just whole side of his face just went numb. And he just started talking.
Isn't that Bell's palsy?
Yes, he had Bell's palsy. I don't know if he had to go to the ER. If you have Bell's palsy, you're listening to this, let's raise some awareness. I'll retweet a foundational link. But
I don't know much about it, but I know some people
body just goes
numb. Yeah. Well, you probably think you're having a stroke, and then, life will hit you quick, man. That's why I tell people the only thing that you want when you feel like shit is just to be healthy again. Being sick sucks.
I've been sick I don't even know what it is. I feel like I'm just permanently ill. I'm looking forward to this holiday season.
Well, it's a grind up there in Chicago during the winter. It's a grind. Everybody gets sick.
Do you want it? I don't want to like spoil anything, but does Cooper know what he's getting for Christmas?
No, he doesn't. He doesn't. But
don't say
well, he doesn't watch the show. He's not allowed to watch the show.
All it takes is one kid, one thing. Yo, dude, you hear Cooper? Do you hear what? Do they call you Mr. Arietta?
Some of the kids do, yeah. Which is polite.
Is anybody calling you Snake?
None of the kids yet. No. Well, maybe one or two on the baseball team every once in a while, but usually it's Coach Jake or Mr. Arietta.
That takes balls. The kid who's like, "Hey, Snake, I got you." He's just competing though. He's in the moment. He sees
that'd be cool.
Like one of the guys.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
I could never call any of my coaches any of the nicknames or no matter what. Everybody on the team. Hey, Snides was the one, Eric Snyder. Hey, Snides. And no matter what, just like, yes, sir, yes, coach. I just can't, I don't know.
Can we show firearms on the show?
Yes, we can. We can.
So if you're watching on YouTube, my buddy just finished this one for Cooper.
I'm going to describe it. It is a glorious. I'm going to estimate that thing's at least 2 feet
Oh, it's a
long.
little longer than that. It's
Okay, a little
so
bit.
it's a 300 blackout, and it was custom. The whole
Little
thing was
camo?
custom painted. Yeah, custom painted. It's got a EOTech red dot. It's got the Surefire on there. The suppressor, I'll have that in about 3 weeks. Very nice.
And that
Very nice brace.
that shoots bullets.
It does shoot bullets. Yes, it does. Subsonic usually is what we shoot out of that. Very quiet. You don't need air protection, and not much recoil at all. Very very good for the kids to shoot if we're doing target practice. Because a lot of kids don't like to shoot because of the recoil, but it's a very controllable firearm, and you can deer hunt with it. You can hunt hogs with it. Very versatile. So that's why we like them.
Yeah. I'm learning, and I can't wait to shoot. The first time you see me holding that gun, I'm going to be so fucking safe. I've taken firearm safety stuff. And a lot of this I'm just teasing. Of course I know that thing shoots bullets. I have a profound appreciation for firearms, and it's just my way of reconciling the fact that I'm such a novice. I don't know shit. It's a weakness of mine relative to how much of a strength it is of yours. I'm so unworthy to have a conversation about such a beautiful piece of machinery or whatever the fuck weaponry.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people don't like guns, and I understand that, but I kind of grew up around them and have always preached, safety, obviously, because they can be very dangerous in the wrong hands. But we take pride in doing everything as safe as possible, especially around kids. But it's a lot of fun if you do it the right way and they're handled properly. They can be a lot of fun, and it's something that requires a lot of respect. You have to handle with care. Shoot, like target practice and shooting steel targets. It's a lot of fun. It can be expensive because ammo can be. It's not very cheap, but it's fun to do with your family. And if you understand them, they're not that scary. They're very powerful and they can do a lot of harm. But if handled the right way and done in a safe setting, it's a lot of fun.
Let's grab some fun. But then it's like, you want some fun? Let's blow some shit up.
Yes. Fuck yeah. Blow up some tannerite, which can be dangerous too. Just make sure you're it's
That's
basically
in Breaking Bad. Doesn't he
it's like
steal that in
dynamite.
Breaking Bad? Okay.
Yeah. It's a blast. It's a blast. But you got to make sure you're
Oh,
you're
you
behind.
didn't mean to do that. You
No, I
didn't mean
didn't.
to.
No, you got to make sure you're behind cover and you're far enough distance away, because it can send shit flying. At a buddy's ranch, we shot tannerite that we covered with corn, and all the pigs come in. And pigs are an invasive species, so we're trying to get rid of them. So we let all the pigs come to this corn. My buddy hits the tannerite, and there are pig parts like flying like 100 yards. We found pieces of pigs and trees all over the property. So I don't know if much of the audience loves that, but it's an absolute blast. If you want to shoot tannerite and you want to kill some pigs, come down to Texas.
I can guarantee you the portion of the audience that's here listening to this is either passionate about what you're talking about or want to learn more because they're interested in you. And that's the beauty of having a show. And that's the beauty of getting to the end of the show. And we grind. We're at the end of the week. You're cooking 3 different types of meats. Now's the time. Yeah, now's the time, all right, let's level up. Who out here actually knows about tannerite? Who actually knows, Jake's sitting here talking about stuff, I'm picturing stuff getting blown up, but there's guys out there that are like, fuck yeah, that's for you. And Jake, you got to meet these guys. These guys are fucking a DM me. Talk to me, boys.
You know what's wild is that you can just go buy tannerite. You can buy it off the shelf. Yeah, you can go buy it. I mean, it's super dangerous, again, in the wrong hands. But, yeah, if you want to buy tannerite, you can go certain places and buy it. Pick it up.
I need to go buy a Zantac or an antacid and have a big night. I'm just kidding.
And now I got to get on a call with the golf sim guy because I'm trying to
so-
get the license for the golf simulator to my account so I can buy these courses. And it's absurd how much they charge for these courses. I told you before the show. For like Pebble Beach and St. Andrews and some of these courses, there's a 10 course like bundle they call it. It's like $2,500. So I might just play the 4 courses that come with it and say fuck the other ones. Because $2,500 for
You
software.
won't last a week, pal. I'm sorry. You'll get bored on those 4 courses.
And you're right. Then I'm going to need 10 more, which is another $2,500. You spend whatever you spend on the sim, $25,000, $30,000, and now you got to spend $12,000 to get all the courses. I don't like that.
They should have told you up front.
They absolutely should have. But
Now you're hooked in, pal.
yeah. I'm going to get on the phone with him and see what he says.
Now, and last
I'll
thing,
beg for a discount.
noodle this around. We talked about this. You're getting fucked right now on the software, okay? Now you can take it. Obviously, I mean, you don't really have a choice, or you're going to have to take it up. You're going to have to take it on this one. You're going to have to buy the 10 courses. You're going to have to pay the $2,500 on the back end. Is it a big enough problem where you and I want to solve it? We go to market. So we figure out a solution where it's like, hey, how much are those courses? 10? I'll give you 20, and I'll charge you half. That solution's out there. We're working on it. This is starting 9. Subscribe to the show, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, subscribe.
Big
Hang
news
with us.
coming.
Hang with us.
Huge guest coming. Big news. I would say that. Big news. Stay tuned.
Always big news.
Is it too early? Can I say it? Merry Christmas, buddy.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. I just wish you a happy holiday season and good health. Most importantly, good health.
Back to you, pal. Right back to you. This is starting 9. We'll talk soon, guys. We very much appreciate you guys following and subscribing and all that good stuff. We'll talk soon.
And you were going to say it, but I will. We love you.